Joe, why should the average homeowner care about insurance supplementing?
A great question. Insurance companies are not always going to do the right thing by you. Knowing what to do when insurance company is doing the wrong thing, what to do when they are denying a claim that should be paid out legitimately, what to do when an insurance company has approved your roof, but they're only paying for $500 when it should be $1,000 or whatever the numbers might be. But just being able to identify, okay, what's the next step after my insurance company doesn't give me what they really should have to begin with.
Welcome to this edition of the Hoel Truth Podcast. Today our special guest is Joe Zavodney with Zavodney Consulting, and I'll let him introduce himself, but the relationship here is we use them to help us out on our insurance claims. So we're just going to chat a little bit about life and business and how we work together to help our customers out, and then also what our customers can do, or really anybody can do if they ever have a home insurance claim, if they're working with us or you or completely somebody else.
Yep. So as he said, I'm Joe. I am a father as of maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, a husband as of 2 years and 9 months ago, got pregnant right as soon as we jumped into marriage. Live in a small town, Cedarville, Ohio, studied at that university there, chemistry, and now here I am doing absolutely nothing with it. My brother started a roofing company and then eventually a supplementing company to help people process their claims, and he was asking for help on the weekends while I was in my senior year, and I was a very smart student, so I didn't go to any job fairs throughout my entire college education. And I was just thinking, I'll figure it out when I get out. And I didn't even have to wait that long. So I dove into the roofing industry. I knew nothing about it. Head first, learned a lot, still learning a lot. And then obviously things have just kind of spiraled to where, here we are able to help clients all across the nation. But like I said, we're in Cedarville, Ohio. So most of our clients are kind of close to that home base area. Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio area. So yeah, that's who I am. That's what I do. I've been in the industry for 6-7 years now. And as I said, still learning a lot and still got a long way to go. So, your brother Daniel is who I met first. Older brother then? Yes. Yep.
Okay.
That sounded aggressive. It was, he's older. He's not like aggressively older. But yeah.
Like he's close to retirement. No,
yeah.
I'm joking. Right. So kind of, fortunately thankful that you ran over here for a podcast, just did some training with our sales team. So really, so people kind of understand, like, the supplementing is every insurance company, 99% of the time, let's put it that way, they leave stuff off, and some customers are like, no, it's my insurance company. They would never short me. And I'm like, well, yes, they would, because if they save just a few $1,000s per claim, I mean, that's billions and trillions a year in savings and profits for them. So I guess kind of the first thing I think we would talk about is, some key points some pointers for homeowners on how to make their process quicker. And before we go completely to that, like we were talking off camera earlier, when I started in this business almost 10 years ago, like, you used to be able to knock a door, you can see wind damage on a roof, and I could be like, hey, you've got wind damage. I've helped Susie down the road and Mr. Smith down the road here. Like, I can do handle all the insurance stuff for you. You need to call it in. You need to pick what color you want, and you need to sign checks. And unfortunately, the game has changed, Absolutely. Where the homeowner has to be a lot more involved, because it's gotten to the point that I've had insurance agents, I won't call them out on the podcast because one of them is local to here, told me they didn't really care about what I wanted. I said, I know, but you need to care about your client that's a mutual client. So, and
not just once, but also is, that's part of the contract, that insurance contract. It's what they deserve and what you've promised them as an insurance company.
Right. So I guess give some pointers to homeowners of what they can do when they do have a claim, when they need to call. how soon they need to call in and any documentation that they need to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen, and this is kind of a little bit of an aside, I've seen adjusters change their determination just because of a Ring camera video of, oh, there really was hail out on this property, or there really was storm damage out on this property. So any documentation that a homeowner can get, pictures of the hail in their hand, a few hailstones in their freezer, or, even a news article, anything that you guys can be gathering together to keep in your back pocket or in the back of your freezer, depending on what it is that you have, is always going to be helpful. But as far as filing a claim, I would say as soon as the storm has occurred, if it's a catastrophe, if we're talking about a tornado, I would call my insurance company right away. But most cases, you're talking about a situation where you aren't either sure you have damage and you've called out a contractor, or there was storm, so you ask for a professional storm damage inspection, or maybe somebody's come to your house and notified you, hey, your neighbors have damage, they were approved for a full replacement through their insurance company, and we think that this storm also occurred here. We'd be happy to take a look. So typically when it comes to filing a claim, I recommend that as soon as you're aware that there's damage, not only is it advisable for you to file a claim, but I also believe that from kind of a generic policy perspective, those policies are going to typically gear the homeowners to be responsible to file a claim as soon as they're aware of those damages. And so for a few reasons, especially in the case when there's a catastrophe or a storm that has occurred recently, these insurance companies are going to deploy a lot of resources, and mostly in terms of, human adjusters who are out on site to come out and inspect large swaths of properties that have been impacted by this storm. And so not only does that mean that there's a lot more staffing in the area to be able to evaluate your claim on a more prompt timeline, but then also they've got checkbooks. These guys are out there to approve claims. They already know that the storm damaged this neighborhood because they've inspected 5 other roofs down the road. So they're not really out there to establish, is this hail or was this not? Did a tornado really occur here? Mm-hmm. They're out there to say, okay, how bad's the damage? How quickly can I write a check and move on to the next claim? And so even if that leaves you in a little bit of a mess where they've clearly neglected to account for certain things, that's what that supplemental process is for us. We're there to demonstrate and document those things, so that your team can go out and tarp more roofs and help more people. But better to have somebody out there promptly writing a check, extending coverage for you and your house and your property, and then iron out some of those smaller details on the back end than to wait until everything is set in stone, everything is in place. Because as you said, this insurance process is not getting faster. Insurance companies are happy to write these checks as slowly as possible. And so if you're able to capture it in that moment of, there's a catastrophe here, then that's only going to assist with the claims process moving along quickly and, the checks coming faster. And so that's what I would recommend. File it quickly.
So when you say I just want to talk in some lingo that customers sometimes in the roofing space, we talk our lingo and people extend coverage, admit there is damage. That's some of these companies there's blatant obvious damage and they're acting like there's zero damage, where, like you said, if they open coverage or they say, yes, there is some hail damage here, and we may not agree, there may be more than they want to admit, but that at least gets the ball rolling. Also, there's different policies. Some is short of you only have 6 months. Some you have up to 2 years to file that claim, and I guess let's kind of talk about so the door knocking is still a part of our marketing, our lead generation, as companies. And I hate when people all are like, oh, every door knocker is a scam. They're just, they're trying to rip you off. And yes, it's kind of like everything in life. There's bad cops, there's good cops.
Right.
There's bad contractors, there's good contractors. It's good doctors, bad doctors, So, what kind of, as a homeowner, and you know, the nice thing about smartphones these days is they date and timestamp every picture now. So,
Right.
you know, you are correct. You know, a Ring camera showing the hail hitting or pictures, you know, so that is beneficial. But what should the homeowner expect? Because here's what I always tell homeowners, because there's still that perception that they've got to get 3 estimates for insurance. And I say, no, actually you don't. You can pick a contractor. But I said, what I always try to recommend is go meet with 2 or 3 contractors and pick which one you think is going to represent you the best. Because I always put it as like, if you're picking a lawyer to go fight a claim in a case in court, like you don't want somebody saying you have to use this guy over here.
Right.
And the nice thing about insurance work is you pay your deductible if it's a good policy. So it's the same cost to hire a preferred or a recommended or a professional contractor than it is somebody with no credentials or somebody from out of state. So what should homeowners look for when it comes to a contractor coming out that first time?
Man, that's a really good question. I mean, I think even just their promptness and their professionalism is always going to speak to, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. Are they communicating with you? Are they articulating this? Especially when we're talking about an insurance claim, are they familiar with, you know, what insurance claims processes are like? You know, do they know what happened 10 years ago, and then do they know what's happening today? You know, so obviously those are some of the things that you can see right off the rip. But you're absolutely right. You know, people. If I were to file a claim, I wouldn't want just, who's the cheapest person that can do my roof for me? I would want it to be put back the right way. I would want to make sure that this company isn't going to go away in 3 years when my workmanship warranty all of a sudden reveals a need to start looking into it because I'm getting leaks. You know, I think you even mentioned before that you've been out to that area and had to redo several roofs because of workmanship issues, because, you know, whether it's somebody who knows there's a really bad storm in the area and they've driven in from Texas or otherwise, you know, knowing that somebody is reputable, they have good reviews, they are local, those are all going to go a long way. And then obviously, you know, do I have a good relationship with them? Could I ask them any questions that I need? And of course, as I've already mentioned, are they actually going to respond to me? Are they going to meet me out at my property when they say they are? So, I mean, and that's probably true about most industries, but I think especially in the roofing industry, you're going to have a lot of people who aren't going to show up. You're going to have a lot of people who are happy to pack up their business and sprint to the next town because there's a tornado. And then guess what? They're going to keep running. They're not going to still be there 10 years down the road. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and like one thing that we do, we use an app right now currently is called Company Cam. What's really nice with it, so, you know, when we're working with you guys on a claim, we help the homeowner. We get the what we call scope of work insurance estimate for what a homeowner considers it, and we send that over to you guys with our Company Cam link. And our Company Cam, I mean, we do a thorough inspection when it comes to, you know, an exterior inspection. And even if somebody calls and wants a run of gutters done, just as like, hey, I want to pay out of pocket for a run of gutters, because believe it or not, how many insurance claims have started by, I just want that run of gutters is ugly.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you got hail damage on your gutters. Wait a second. Do you mind me check out your roof? You got hail damage on your roof. And then they get a $20,000 makeover for $1,500 deductible or whatever it is. Yeah. You know, so one thing we do, Company Cam, just because that dates and timestamps like what we're finding. And it's actually even super beneficial if you call us right now, this week, next week, and we look at stuff, everything's fine. And then next summer you get a leak, and then we go back and now we see hail damage. Well, you've had hail since the last time we were out here, and we got a date of when we were here before. You know, that can be really beneficial.
Yeah, and
you know, for homeowners. A
very brief story about the reason why that's important. And this was just last week that this occurred. I've been working with a homeowner. The insurance company originally came out and denied the claim, and this is out in Virginia. We demonstrated through, you know, using that same app, you know, hey, here's pictures and evidence showing that this property was actually damaged. They sent out another inspector and they said, you know what, there is damage, and we're going to write this for, you know, this March, because there was a storm then. it was May. And our pictures of damage showed that this had occurred before that. We had taken pictures in April. The policy that was in effect for the storm date of May had a $10,000 deductible for this homeowner. And because we had time-stamped photos and documentation to prove the fact that the storm had occurred before then, their deductible just was, again, last week shifted from a $10,000 deductible down to a $1,000 deductible. And so that's $9,000 that would have been out of pocket for this homeowner if we didn't have time-stamped photos, if we weren't using, up-to-date technology and apps. And I think that's absolutely right. So even down to that, what are the resources that your roofing company is using? Are they documenting this property as if it were your own, as if they cared about and were invested in the claim process for you?
Well, and another quick story I had, I was working some claims in Columbus and in this little cul-de-sac area, and two brothers lived beside each other. And it was so funny because the one called in late and was like, I'm leaving tomorrow at 11:30 for vacation for, it was a cruise. I'm going to be gone 10 days. If you can't get here before then, I'll call somebody else. Got down there, worked with him. The guy's like, I don't want nobody here while I'm going on vacation. When I get back, we'll deal with it. And that's what he said in the beginning. I was like, that's fine, sir. Let me go look to see what I find. Well, but before I get off the roof, I had said, I'm like, hey, I'm finding hail damage. So he calls. His adjuster calls me before I'm even off the roof and says, hey, I want to meet out there Thursday. I was like, he don't want anybody here. He goes, oh, no. He said he trusts you. He said, I can share all the information that I have with you and go over to his brother's house. His brother the storm literally happened on a Thursday. Friday at midnight, his policy expired with one big carrier, and it was picked up by a different big carrier, at 12:01 Saturday morning. And, that guy was nervous. He's like, who do I file the claim against? And I was like, you filed against when it happened.
Yep.
So he goes, they're not going to pay. And I was like, they legally have to pay. You had legit coverage.
Right.
I get it. Auto is different. You can't. If you have a wreck tomorrow, then that's the insurance company. If you had a different insurance company 3 days before that, but that is one thing that, that's pretty cool that picture, saved that customer $9,000.
Yeah.
To us, it just saves us a lot of time and, it just makes it's a smoother process. Here inside Hoel Roofing, we talk about customer experience. So how can we make this the easiest for customers? Now, unfortunately, when you're dealing with insurance companies, there's only so much
Is it ever easy?
we can do, so it's different if we've just got to show up, put a roof on your house and leave. But dealing with insurance, so.
And a brief point, and yeah, exactly what he's saying. The clients that we work with, which would be Hoel Roofing and this other client down in Virginia, they're the types of companies that, and he didn't pay me to say this, are going to fight for, and this was a process that took weeks and weeks, months and months to get this deductible changed. And what does that change about the money that contractor is getting? Absolutely nothing. Right. At the end of the day, the deductible is the out-of-pocket cost that the homeowner's responsible to pay, or the copay, as some people refer to it. And the reason that we pursued that was because it was the right thing to do, not because it was an opportunity for us to pocket $9,000 more, but because that's what was right for the homeowner to be restored in the way that they should have been. And the same thing would be true about your guys' company. Yeah. I know that. And it's just a once in a million type of a circumstance, but so I think that's another, maybe even going backwards.
Yep.
What do you want to look for in a company? And maybe you can't see those things, but there's a clear vested interest in that from that company that you are made whole after a storm event, and they're willing to go to bat for you towards that insurance company when they're not playing fair, which is, as you said, more and more they're not wanting to play fair because they found out that they can make more money if they don't play fair. And if they don't write checks, there's more money in their bank accounts. Who would have guessed?
10 years ago, I remember meeting with State Farm adjusters, and they had a checkbook and they could literally print it out, not write a check, but print it out.
Yeah,
and I mean, as a sales guy, like that shortened the sales cycle because we weren't waiting on paperwork and waiting on a check to mail. I mean, the customer was already there because the adjuster was at their house, and then we could get their job done quicker.
Yeah.
And, but actually I ran into one, I think it was last year, and he still had a printer. I couldn't believe it. But another thing I wanted to step back on was when you said they're deploying. So, I think some other points that to maybe cover with homeowners is there's really 3 different types of inspectors that come out when there is storm damage. One is what we call a staff adjuster. That means they're insurance adjuster for State Farm, for Indiana Farmers, for Indiana Farm Bureau. Most every company has their own staff adjusters. And then they have what they call independent adjusters, and they could show up and inspect your house and be representing State Farm. And then their next appointment, they may be representing Erie or Travelers or something. Right. They're independent. And then unfortunately here lately, they're starting to subcontract some of this out to 16-year-old boys that don't even know what a roof is now. I mean, there's a few companies out there that they are, a third party that get up there. They're supposed to document it. Sometimes I literally wonder if they literally have any kind of training. But let's speak a little bit on to what is the homeowner's rights with a policy. And, unfortunately, some of them third-party companies have a bad rap of not documenting properly, not submitting it in, where it's like, where does a homeowner have when it's like, okay, can they request a staff adjuster or anything like that due to, how does the policy protect the homeowner?
Yeah. So, I mean, as an insurance policy, it might not clearly say, okay, these are the types of people that can come out to your property and represent you. I mean, at the end of the day, the insurance company probably has some rights to send whoever they want out to the property. However, as a homeowner, you guys absolutely have the right to request another inspection, request an inspection with an adjuster who's on staff. And typically, as a side note, those staff adjusters have been there for 5, 10, 20, 50 years, and those are the people that have been there in the glory days where things were easy, and B, didn't just come from working at McDonald's flipping burgers where, they've got their rule book, and their rule book says that you can't approve X, Y, or Z, and they have no idea that there are always extenuating circumstances, always reasons for why this rule book is not a god or something that they have to follow every single time. And that's because every single homeowner is different. Every single policy is different. Every single home is different. The amount of homeowners that have been through there, we've got 100-plus-year-old homes in where I'm from in Ohio, and I'm sure around here as well. And those are just a whole different animal to tackle than something that was built 15, 20 years ago. And so all of these things come into play. And this rule book quickly becomes obsolete as something that's just not helpful. And so the same thing is true, especially when you're dealing with an unreasonable adjuster who comes out, either, whether they're an independent or whether it's a person that, to us at least, looks like they literally were just sent out there to not mark up anything, not inspect anything, and say no damage. And of course, we might be a little skeptical as the contractors that are trying to make sure these things are moving quickly. But I mean, you see it enough times, and you see all of the evidences, and you can only help wonder, but okay, I don't even know if they've been trained to document damage. I don't know if they've ever had a class to identify what storm damage is. They haven't even inspected anything on the ground level. They got right up on the roof. They didn't ask the homeowner if there were any leaks inside their house. If they're not doing these things, if they're not looking at the property comprehensively, which is, I think, another point that I brought up earlier about a good contractor, then maybe you can make the same assumptions. This is not a good adjuster, you know, in the same way that you might be skeptical about a roofing company that comes out, looks at the roof, doesn't document anything at the ground level, doesn't ask you if you have any interior damage or things like that. That's only going to give you a good window into, okay, this guy doesn't necessarily know what he's doing or isn't going to do a thorough job. And so then if it comes back as a denial, yeah, that's exactly what happened. They weren't thorough with their inspection. And so sometimes it's best to just let them do their thing. And then as soon as they're done, highlight all the ways that they've messed up or highlight all the things that they've forgotten and request another adjuster out there. And maybe specifically, if possible, a staff adjuster who's actually an employee at State Farm or an employee at Allstate or whoever writes your policy, who's actually been there, done that, gone through training, and let's hope for the best that this next person that comes out is going to review your property, evaluate the damages more thoroughly and comprehensively than the first guy.
Well, and one that reminds me, or one that pops up in my mind was we had a tornado damaged house, and I believe we dealt with 5 or 6 adjusters. And it's funny you with what you said, because the last one ended up being a lady that grew up in Richmond, and she had been with them for like 30 years. Yep. So she ended up closing it out, and it was so funny because I met out there with the father-in-law of the husband, because he was semi-retired, and the wife worked a lot, and I'm never intimidated by like when a parent wants to kind of like just make sure that the contractor knows what's going on, just because like we're legit, we're not trying to be sneaky or snaky or anything. It was actually kind of funny because we had a little disagreement with the insurance company on the countertops. So flooring ran underneath the kitchen cabinets, and they said, well, just take the countertops off, remove the kitchen cabinets, take the flooring out, then put the kitchen cabinets back and the countertops back. It's like, okay, the countertops are glued on there. Right. Well, this particular customer's, the father-in-law kind of thought I was getting greedy by saying they needed new countertops. So he found a guy that said he could remove them. I said, okay, I just want to meet him out there. And I just said, okay, I just need an estimate, but in your estimate, I need you to write that you're reliable for the countertops and the cabinets in case they don't come apart. He goes, I can't do that. So then the father-in-law was like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, it's funny because when that 6th adjuster, I think it was 6, she showed up, the father-in-law was there, and she's like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'll be the claim rep through the rest of this. And he laughed because it got to the point where he was annoyed with it. And she's like, well, what's that about? It's like, ma'am, no disrespect, but you're the 6th one that we've heard this from. So that's the only bad thing about when they do send the catastrophic people in, because they are only in town for a set period of time. I understand what you say. They're what we call a little looser with the checkbooks, maybe more a little willing to pay claims, get them closed out, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's more challenging now, unfortunately. But honestly, if I say this out loud, maybe I shouldn't. It kind of weeds out the guys that didn't know what the hell they were doing. Right. That just luckily would get adjusters to be like, oh yeah, I'll pay for new roof and gutters on that house. Where it's like, and that's why our process is so thorough. That's why even on a normal inspection, we try to take a lot of pictures, and I don't want customers to think that we're trying to sell them on something they don't need. It's just, let's have this as a record, let's make sure there's nothing. Or we always try to talk to the husband and wife, because it's always funny. The husband's got his idea what needs done right away, and the wife is usually a little different. Or, hey, did you tell them about the leak that we've been having over here? Oh, I forgot that. That's in your closet. I never go in there, or whatever that is. So, and that's why we've teamed up with you guys. Like I was just telling the sales team, like I think I used 4 other supplementing companies before I found you guys. And it's nice because as a company, we're only as strong as our team, but as a construction company, there's kind of that other level of like, okay, our vendors, if it's supplier or supplementing vendors or, you know, our crews, like that's can make us look really good or really dumb. Like with that particular tornado damage house, very fortunate. The representative with you guys that was, he drove over here from his house from practically Cedarville and came to the office. He threw a whole roofing shirt on. So the adjuster had no idea that he was the supplementer. But like that meant a lot to me as a contractor. It's like, okay, like these guys do a really good job supplementing for us, A, but B, they're willing to do the little stuff like that because, you know.
Which doesn't sound so little, but yeah.
Right. But like at the end of the day, it's like, okay. And, you know, that just kind of helped. I mean, I don't want to say numbers, but we doubled what the initial offer was from State Farm. I'll blast them to get this house back to pre-existing, you know, and that's another word that we talk a lot about in our world is like, how do we get it back to pre-exist as good or better than the pre-existing condition where they're like, oh, just replace one side of siding, even though it's not even remotely close in color. And, you know, unfortunately for Indiana, we don't have the matching laws as good as Ohio does, you know.
But for what it's worth, if you happen to be in the state of Ohio, it's not getting, well, I mean, this is not a good thing, but those laws, whether it's case law that's come out, interpreting that or otherwise, it's just, even though the state says that, you know, and the official terminology is that the repairs need to be a reasonably comparable appearance, aka it needs to look the way it looked before. And, you know, if the house was uniform before, it should look uniform when we're all done. You know, insurance companies are kind of finding a little ways to claw into that and make it not so black and white that anybody that reads that should read that and say, oh, so you're saying if it doesn't match, it should be written to match. And then lo and behold, insurance companies have found a way to say, well, when they say it should match, what they really mean is it should kind of maybe match. And that's why we're not going to pay to match. And so we're getting to be where we're in your boat and we're dealing with difficult adjusters who like to give us a run for our money. And
so we had an adjuster one time. We were in Brookville, and I know I really shouldn't bash some companies, but I don't really care. It was an Allstate claim, brand new rep. He's like, hey, this guy's got 2 missing shingles. I said, dude, it's Allstate. You can't even get them to pay for the 2 shingles missing, let alone anything else. He's like, nope. He goes, the homeowner told me the adjuster says that if I don't find anything that's matching, he'll pay for a new roof. And I'm like, dude, it's Allstate. No, like, don't waste your time. So he grabbed a couple shingles. He went down, took some pictures. I told him how to take the pictures. And the adjuster was from Ohio.
Oh, my
and he
goodness.
thought Indiana was matching. He approved the new roof.
Wow.
So I took the sales rep. I was like, okay, so let me retract what I said. Always do what we can for the customer. And I wanted him to help the customer as much as possible. But he was brand new. And he was like, yes, I want to get this one bought. And I'm like, and he had never dealt with Allstate.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just like, and I'm like, man, I don't want you to get deflated when this doesn't ever happen again. Allstate, you know. And then literally, the funny part is the guy works for Owens Corning, and we put a metal roof on his house.
Didn't even want shingles.
Wow. So they tease him at the plant. They call him Mr. Metal or something like that.
That's
because
really good.
He got a metal roof put on his house. But, but on a serious note, like I really do want the guys to do as much as they can to help the customer, because sometimes like that, the insurance company will approve it. Now, with what I have heard on Indiana, is like we can't argue like the reasonable appearance thing, because, if it devalues the property,
yes, absolutely,
then they do owe more than just one shingle.
Yeah, and it's something that you already hit on a little bit. How was this house before this process started? Did you have a checkerboard roof? Okay, well then why would an insurance company approve anything other than, putting back a checkerboard roof back up there? But what about the case when, you had a uniform appearance, when any realtor or a property appraiser is going to tell you that a roof that looks all quilted up there or checkerboarded is going to be a lot less valuable than a house that doesn't have that, if you're comparing two side by side. So, there's a value of your property that's worth considering and important to consider. And then, as I said, what was there before the storm? Are we talking about a situation where they had a uniform roof at the beginning of this process, and when it's all said and done, when all the storm damage has been restored, it needs to be done not only in a manner that's in accordance with what the codes require, also it needs to be done in a manner that's going to bring the property back to the way it was before. And so that can play into when the shingles are matching perfectly and when they're not. But it's also things like, what happens when I take off a shingle? What happens to all the surrounding shingles? If you have a really old roof, are we causing damage to those things? Even the most careful using tweezers to pull out the nails, if that's even possible.
Right.
These other shingles, because you have to manually break the seals, then you have to pry under them because they're installed from bottom to top. You have to pry under them and lift out the nails from the shingles above and surrounding it. And that means all these seals have to be broken. All these shingle tabs that have maybe been on there 10, 20, even 30 years are getting manipulated substantially just to get these nails out to slide one shingle out. So even when there's only one shingle damage that looks like, oh, that's just a repair, that's not even worth going out calling anybody to do, you could be causing damage to these surrounding things. And if you're not documenting that, you might file a claim after the fact because you've realized, wow, now my roof is leaking even worse than it was before. I didn't take pictures because I didn't think I needed to. Yep. When at the beginning of this process, if we had filed a claim initially, we could show all of those consequential damages that are occurring. And they can even account for, the nails that are tarping in that roof, all those shingles are nailed through and would have to be replaced as well. And so there's just a few things. I know I'm kind of running on several different tangents, but
while you're on that, let's talk quick about a repair or a patch, because here's some scenarios we've seen where, my dad, he roofed his house 30 years ago, and he's got an extra bundle of shingles that are green and their shingles are blue, and they run up there and he tacks it up there to keep the water coming in because he's got 3 grandkids in that house. Right. Like, where really they should get a tarp put up there. And if they're going to call insurance, because sometimes insurance will show up and won't consider that a temporary repair, they'll be like, well, you fix that. Right. And or if 5 years ago they put green shingles on a blue roof, then it's kind of, it defeats, it's harder for us to come in and help them find, because then now they did have a checkerboard roof before then. So, but another thing is, and I'm kind of busting contractors' chops here, only put a tarp on what needs tarp too. Like if there's 5 shingles missing, put a 5x3 tarp on it. Don't put a 30x40 tarp over half the roof. Yeah. Because then you put holes in, all that kind of stuff too. So I guess when you're looking at it for a contractor, like, let's make sure you kind of evaluate that also, just so that helps you, because it is your responsibility to minimize damage as the policyholder.
Yes.
However, don't shoot yourself in the foot per se with a mismatch shingle up there.
Yep. And that's a really good point. This is like, if you're only going to take one thing away from this, maybe this isn't the one thing, but this should be one of the things that you take away from this. As a homeowner, you guys are responsible for mitigating future damages. So if a whole chunk of your roof is blown off, or if a tree branch punctures through one of your windows and you let that sit and you call in the claim, and then 2 days later, a massive rainstorm monsoon comes through and saturates your carpet and damages all the floorboards, and you did nothing to mitigate those damages. Now, you might have put a tarp in and then the windstorm blew that up. There's reasonable repairs,
right? And
then there's unreasonable repairs where you didn't do anything. At that point, the insurance company does have a legitimate right to say, well, you didn't didn't do anything to protect your property once this storm came through. So that's another reason, tying back to all the way back at the beginning. What's something you can do? File your claim promptly, but then also get a reputable contractor out there who can tarp it in a reasonable way,
right,
which isn't way too big, but also isn't way too small that the roof is still going to leak in the first place. That it needs to be secured. It needs to hold up. It needs to last, but it doesn't need to be the full roof when you've got 2 shingles missing here, So
yeah. You said tree. That's another question that I feel like we get a lot asked as a contractor, and we're not going to talk a bunch of policy. There's a bunch of different policies out there, but what kind of, if the tree falls on the house, then insurance is responsible to get the tree off the house. But if the tree just falls out in the yard and doesn't hit any fence or garage or house, it doesn't fall back on the insurance company. Is that correct?
Yeah. And we don't deal too, I'm getting called when a property is damaged. Mm-hmm. So I'm not usually getting a call when we're dealing with a tree that's just fallen on the property unrelated. But usually the turning point, and of course every policy is different, but I can at least speak to my policy. My policy would be such that if a tree fell on my property and even just nicked a part of my property, I can file a claim, right, and they can help mitigate some of those damages. But if the tree is falling in such a way that it's not damaging anything, then usually an insurance company doesn't have any contractual or policy-based reason to get involved.
And normally there's also a tree limit is normally a policy. Sorry, all of a sudden my throat got real dry, but there's usually a tree limit also, where, I'm just thinking my wife's aunt, they had a tree fall and hit a garage. And that worked to her advantage because she got new siding and, new roof on her garage and everything. But looking back at it, the tree fell, and hit that. So, and then something else that I kind of thought of is like with Google, with all the technology is really, really, really good. Sometimes it's not so good. Like now they can get on Google Earth and see that they took a aerial shot of your house 6 years ago and there's missing shingles in.
Right.
You can't call in a claim and say, one thing we always look for are the nails rusted. Mm-hmm. Shingle blows off. Now there's exposed nails. If they're rusted, that's been a while.
Yeah.
Can't really get away with telling the adjuster them blew off last week, Right. Another thing that I guess a lot of homeowners don't maybe understand is like they owe for that one time that it happened. And wind damage can get a little in the gray area because most of the time, if you have 15 missing shingles, they probably all didn't blow off at that one time. Yeah. That kind of depends on the adjuster. Do they want to be nice? Do they want to be fair? And
also maybe depends a little bit on how long you've been with that company.
Yes.
If you've been a member for 10, 15, 20 years, usually that means that it's a somewhat decent company or you've just never filed a claim. But sometimes those adjusters, I've heard them say, you've been a member here for 10 years. Maybe these all didn't happen in this most recent windstorm, but you were under our coverage during that whole time. So we're just going to kind of attribute them all to this claim. But again, that kind of falls back to this is a nice adjuster, a reasonable adjuster, maybe a staff adjuster,
right?
Maybe not a ladder assist adjuster or documenter.
Well, so, and that's another reason I train my sales guys, go be nice at the adjuster meeting. Like, and it's so funny because Chris, my current sales manager, I'll never forget, we had 2 adjuster meetings back to back. Like one day we had one, next day we had another one, and maybe it was the same day. The first one I remember was with State Farm. It was a hail damage claim, and that guy, it was a $7,000 or $8,000 roof. Okay. And I swear we spent an hour and a half out there. I mean, he documented everything.
Oh my goodness.
And the roof was probably 25 years old. He was documenting, there was plenty of hail damage, but then he was documenting this nail pop over here and then this nail pop over here. We get it done. They approve it. Perfect. We go out to the next one. It's probably a $25,000 roof.
Okay.
It's got what we call a discontinued shingle, which they don't make the shingle anymore. And this particular one, they don't make it even anything that looks remotely like it. So it's an easier one for us to file. The guy gets out. He goes, if you hold the ladder, I'm going to take the guy climbed up the ladder. Now, this is a total different insurance company. He climbs up the ladder, takes a couple pictures from there, climbs back the ladder, says, if you'll carry it to the other side of the house, he's like, I'll do the same thing. We weren't there 5 minutes, and he approved the $25,000 roof. So, like, you know, I tell the guys, sometimes it's just kind of playing their game, just roll with kind of things, you know, and go from there. So as we wrap this up, thank you for your time. Is there anything that you feel like we kind of missed here? Because I want to give a shout out for a second. Like, I really want this to be beneficial to our homeowners, to our potential clients, to our current clients, but also like I've got I know some other roofing contractors watch this, like, and, you know, get with Zavodney, give them, if you need some supplementing, because you guys, this isn't a paid ad. This is like legit. Like, you guys are awesome. Always good to work with, you know.
Thank you.
Communicate well. Like, I've always said this, contractors suck in the fact that they don't show up when they say they're going to. They don't do what they say they're going to. And then they don't answer their phones. And what I respect and appreciate about you guys is I know if the adjuster is not responding, the adjuster is going to get an email once a week. Hey, checking in on this supplement.
Yeah.
You know, so that is beneficial to us, but it's really beneficial to our client.
Yeah. Yeah. You can just picture our supplementing team as if we're just a bunch of guys dressed up as like elves and orcs playing Dungeons and Dragons. But instead of playing the game, we're actually all just calling adjusters. And we're doing all the nerdy stuff that the contractors don't have time to do or don't want to do, you know, and that's being good at communicating. But that doesn't mean that I'd be very good at hammering shingles up on your roof. So you've got the right people in the right places. And yeah, we have a similar heart that you guys do. And the clients that we have, we're all, as I see it, unified in this, you know. These homeowners out there, you know, a lot of them have never filed a claim before, or at least a home claim for themselves. You know, they're getting thrown into what is a really messy industry. They're getting thrown into adjusters who have a lot of, like, you know, argumentative baggage, contractors who, depending on the contractor, who are going out there with a shouting match towards these adjusters. And you know, there's a lot of opportunity for greed from contractors. There's a lot of opportunity for insurance companies to do the exact same thing and be greedy with not paying out on claims that they really should be. And so, you know, the things that I love most about my job is, I guess what I'll end with is being able to see something specifically for a homeowner. Again, it was like that $10,000 deductible that was reversed to a $1,000 deductible the other week, knowing that homeowner is being taken care of in that way because of the work that I was putting in and the work that I was doing, and the documentation and the professionalism of that contractor goes a long way. Even if that doesn't affect my paycheck that week, knowing that, you know, these people are being taken care of. And at the same time, you know, obviously we as a company are able to put dinner on our kids' plates. And so we love what we do. We love taking care of our homeowners, and we have the people with whom we work. We've chosen those people, or they've chosen us because we align in those values to want to do the right thing for the homeowner, want to take care of them, want to walk them through or shepherd them through the claims process as confidently as we can, as intelligently as we can, and as, you know, affirmationally as we can. And by that, I mean, like, this is what you guys deserve here, or this is what you should be getting. And even though you're not, we're going to work as much as we can to get you to that end point, even if part of us working towards that is saying, hey, we're dealing with a really unscrupulous adjuster. We're dealing with a really unreasonable adjuster. We're dealing with a really lazy adjuster. You know, whatever it might be, they might just take 6 months to get back to us, but that's totally unacceptable in the same way that it's unacceptable for them to, you know, say that we're not going to pay for these things even if they're damaged by the storm or something along those lines. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah,
I'm good at rambling, that's for sure.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me out. I appreciate the time here.